The first drop didn't come with fire. It came with silence, a quiet ripple through the air as if reality had hiccuped. At 3:16 a.m. over a forgotten desert in what used to be northern Arizona, a tear in the sky opened and bled light. Locals thought it was lightning until the stars blinked out above it. Then the silence turned into screams, and the sand ran red by sunrise. Nobody called them aliens at first. The media labeled it a phenomenon. The government said it was a satellite incident. But when men in armor taller than trucks began walking out of that sky rip, carrying weapons that melted bone from 20 feet, people stopped asking questions. They ran. Those who couldn't run disappeared, and the world changed overnight. But Earth wasn't soft. We weren't the galaxy's charity case, not anymore. I was stationed in the Dakota Zone, one of the last functioning strongholds left after the first wave. The base had no name, just coordinates: 46 degrees 15 minutes 17 seconds north, 100 degrees 35 minutes 12 seconds west. You didn't get promoted here. You got punished or forgotten. We were all ex-somethings. Ex-soldiers, ex-commanders, ex-husbands, men with nothing left to lose except the rifles strapped to our backs and the names etched into our skin like war tattoos. They came again, 2 weeks ago. Bigger, smarter. Their ships didn't just hover. They cloaked. They stalked. They ripped through our outposts like paper, and they didn't care what they stepped on. When word got out that they called for backup from the outer colonies, panic spread. The kind of panic you only see in men who already accepted death once and didn't want to do it again. We were briefed the night before they arrived, if you could call it a briefing. It was more like a warning from a man already halfway to drunk, standing in a bunker with shaking hands. "They're bringing in something worse," he said. "A cleaner class, not infantry. These ones don't leave survivors." Nobody flinched. We were already monsters in our own way. That's what the world did to you after 5 years of running, killing, and watching everyone you knew burn. And then they showed up. Sleek, insect-like things with serrated limbs and no eyes, no voices. They didn't speak. They didn't negotiate. They just landed. And by the second hour, they had already taken out the Seattle Bastion. 30,000 men, gone. That's when Command activated Protocol 9. Nobody knew what Protocol 9 really was. It was old tech, buried files, something from the early war days when Earth first got the idea that survival didn't come from science, but from nightmares. The facility sat beneath our base. We weren't allowed near it. But that night they opened the doors. Metal screeched against rust. The smell was something between iron and rot. And out they came. Not soldiers, not even men. They were us, but not. Bigger, twisted, shaped cannibalistic berserkers who'd been locked away, fed synthetic adrenaline for years, kept sedated by drugs they didn't even have names for. I saw one walk past me. His skin was pale, almost blue, with veins black like oil. He didn't wear armor, just a harness with 2 curved blades strapped to his back. No tags, no eyes. His face had been burned off, and he still smiled. We called them Reapers, and the aliens never saw them coming. The Reapers didn't need guns. They moved like shadows on fire. They didn't follow orders. They hunted. And whatever hell the aliens brought with them, it wasn't worse than the things Earth kept locked in the dark. By sunrise, Seattle was taken back. Only 10 Reapers deployed. Only 1 returned. But that was enough. I remember watching the sky later that night. The stars had returned. The rift above us was gone. But in its place was a silence even thicker than before. Not peace, just the kind of silence you hear after something ancient has fed. Command didn't say a word. Nobody did. We didn't win. We just reminded the galaxy why Earth was left alone for so long. Because when aliens called for backup, they met the real monsters, and we were just getting started. They tried to bury it. That's what they always do. Pretend it didn't happen. Clean up the blood. Delete the footage. Fabricate a story. Advanced cybernetic weapons retook Seattle. Human innovation triumphed. That's what the official broadcast said the next morning, piped into every remaining free zone, every underground bunker still sucking power from decaying grids. But those of us in the Dakota zone knew better. We saw it. We smelled what those things dragged back with them. Limbs of aliens we'd never seen before, melted gear fused into skin, sounds that didn't belong in any living creature's throat. You don't forget that kind of horror. You don't spin it into patriotism and go back to breakfast rations. I kept dreaming about the Reaper that returned, his face, or what was left of it. The way he didn't blink, didn't breathe. He just stood in the yard for 2 straight hours, soaked in blood that steamed off his body like it was boiling from the inside. He didn't speak a single word. Not to the guards, not to command. Not even when they shot him with 6 tranquilizers the size of screwdrivers to drag him back underground. He just smiled. Like he'd won a game the rest of us didn't understand. By the 3rd day, other dropships started appearing, different species, ones we hadn't seen before. The galaxy was watching now. Not through diplomacy or curiosity. They were scared. And scared aliens make stupid moves. We got intel that a coalition was forming. Not peacekeepers, not colonizers, a full-blooded extermination fleet, 8 species, each with a different grudge. They weren't just coming to wipe us out. They were coming to cleanse us from the galactic map. I wish I could say command. Barely. That's when they told us about Black Site Echelon. I got called into the hangar along with 6 others. All ghosts, ex-war dogs, court-martialed, dishonorably discharged, men with sealed files and blood on their hands. We weren't heroes. Hell, I didn't even like half the guys I stood next to. But we were chosen for one reason. We didn't care about orders anymore. Major Harlan stood in front of us. Half his face was metal now. The other half looked like it was still trying to catch up to what happened in Seattle. "We're going behind the grid," he said. "Full blackout, no satellites, no communications, just boots, guns, and darkness." No one asked questions. If you got chosen for Echelon, you were already halfway into the grave. Asking why just made it slower. The mission? Infiltrate Site X3, one of the old labs where they'd made the original Reapers. Rumor said the place was locked down after the first batch turned on their creators. But now? Now Command wanted more. They wanted to release the rest. It sounded suicidal. Probably was. But it was that, or wait for the aliens to glass the planet. We loaded into a retrofitted crawler, one of the few still running on diesel and hate. No AI, no autonav, just steel, sweat, and a rumbling engine that smelled like a dying dragon. The crawler stank of rust and cordite. The seats were stripped down. No seatbelts, no comforts. Just us and our gear. Custom rigs, projectile weapons, because plasma rifles jammed near alien interference zones, and black blades forged from some metal salvaged during the Mars collapse. The ride took 18 hours, through dead zones, towns that used to have names, forests turned to glass. We passed husks of cities that had once been alive, schools, homes, grocery stores, all burned, all empty. When we reached Site X3, it looked like a tomb, half buried in a crater, black metal poking out from beneath layers of earth. The front gate had a human skull hanging from the handle like a warning sign. Whether it was a leftover trophy or some forgotten security measure, we didn't ask. Harlan keyed in the access code. The door didn't open. It screamed. Inside was worse. The place had power, but not normal power. It flickered, like it didn't want to be on. Red emergency lights pulsed down corridors that smelled of antiseptic and rot. Every surface was cold, too cold. There were scratches on the walls, not human ones, clawed deep, like whatever they'd locked inside hadn't just wanted out, it had begged, and we were here to open the cage. We moved in formation. Tight, no radios, just hand signals and gut instinct. My partner Briggs took point. He was the oldest among us, ex-Marine turned merc. His left arm had a kill tally etched into the flesh. He stopped counting at 87. We reached sub-level 3 without incident. But the moment we stepped onto that floor, our boots stuck. Blood. Fresh, still warm. That shouldn't have been possible. Nothing alive was supposed to be here. Except now. Something was. Then we heard it. A voice. No, not a voice, a recording, looping, echoing through the halls from broken speakers. We made them too well. They didn't forget. They didn't forgive. I swear the temperature dropped 10 degrees when that played. We reached the vault. A reinforced chamber sealed by biolocks that required DNA from the original lab scientists. Command had that covered. They gave Harlan a vial with what was left of Dr. Carnes, one of the lead biogeneticists. His blood had been preserved in cryo storage. Why? Don't ask questions you don't want answers to. Harlan inserted the vial. The door hissed. Then it shook. Then it opened. Inside were 12 containment pods. 9 were empty. 3 still had power. And they weren't Reapers, they were worse. These were the prototypes, the Alpha class. No smiles, no visible flesh. Just things wrapped in armored skin with spines growing from their backs like antennae. They didn't sleep, they waited. Harlan stared at them for too long. Then something moved. Not inside the pod, behind us. A shape, tall, slender, wearing human armor, but not walking like one. It stepped into the light. Alien, but not from the invasion fleet. This one was different, cloaked in shadows that didn't belong. Eyes like molten gold, voice like oil poured through teeth. You shouldn't have come here. We opened fire without a word. Bullets hit, but nothing dropped. The thing moved like wind, like time skipping a beat. Briggs was the first to go, throat ripped clean before he could reload. Then Dax, then Lehman. I fired everything I had. The rounds burned out of the chamber, rattling my arm. Then it stopped. The thing screamed, a different sound, not pain, fear. I turned. One of the Alpha class had moved. It wasn't fully awake, but its eyes, they were glowing. The alien hissed once, then it ran, and that's when we knew. We hadn't come to release the monsters. They were already free. We were just too late to stop what came next. I didn't breathe for a full 30 seconds after that thing disappeared. One moment it was there, death made flesh, and the next it had vanished into the walls like smoke through a vent. The silence that followed was worse than any scream. 3 of our team lay dead in less than 15 seconds. Briggs was folded in half like a paper doll. Dax's head was gone entirely, and Lehman had a hole in his chest that looked melted around the edges, like something had clawed through bone without even touching him. And still the pod remained open. That Alpha, it wasn't just awake, it let us in. Harlan stumbled back, blood on his cheek, not his eyes wide with something I hadn't seen in him before. Shame. They said they were dormant, he muttered. Command swore they'd be sedated for the retrieval. They swore. I grabbed him by the vest and slammed him into the bulkhead. You knew something like this could happen. You brought us into a fucking nest. He didn't fight back. He just nodded. A slow, bitter nod, like a man already halfway through his final confession. I didn't have a choice. None of us ever did. The lights flickered again. Only this time they didn't come back. Red plunged to black. Then white emergency strobes lit up every 10 seconds. Just enough to see the corridors in snapshots. Shadows moved between pulses, long, sharp, fast. Fall back, I shouted, dragging Harlan by the collar. We made it back to the lift, barely. Grayson was already gone. He'd wandered back to check the power relay. We found his hand, just the hand, still holding a sidearm. It twitched when we touched it. Nerve memory, maybe, or something worse. 4 of us left now. Me, Harlan, Keg, Ward. Keg was an old demolition tech with more scars than skin. Ward was the sniper. Quiet, efficient, and possibly the only one who still believed we had a shot of making it out. I envied that delusion. We reached the surface just before dawn. The sky looked wrong. Not just clouds, but a shimmer, like oil on water, bending sunlight into patterns that made my stomach turn. They're already here, Ward said, adjusting his scope. Cloaked ships, watching. Waiting, Harlan added. For what? I asked. He looked at the hatch. They know what we woke up. We didn't talk much after that. We radioed command, but no signal got through. Either we were jammed or someone cut us off. Didn't matter. We still had a job. Contain or kill. We weren't idiots. We knew killing an alpha was like trying to drown fire. But containment? Maybe. If we could trap them in the lower levels and collapse the entrance, we might buy Earth another few weeks, maybe even months. We moved fast, set charges, 12 in total, all old-school analog wired, no digital timers, no remote triggers, EMP resistant, the kind of gear you used when you expected the enemy to eat your tech before your body. But the deeper we went, the less real everything felt. The walls had changed, not physically, but organically. Wet sounds followed us, breathing, clicking, things whispered in languages that felt like knives behind the ears. At sublevel 4, we saw the second alpha. It wasn't in a pod, it was crouched in the corner of a nursery, a place where once they must have experimented with early-stage subjects. There were cribs in there, still stained with blood, still moving. The alpha didn't attack. It looked at us, studied us, then it pointed down the hallway. Keg raised his gun. "That's a trap. Everything's a trap now," I said. We followed. The corridor led to a room that didn't exist on the map. It had no number, no designation, just a steel door with a phrase etched into it. "Do not open unless Earth is lost." Ward didn't hesitate. Then we've been lost a long time. Inside was a single console, still powered. Warning, neural pairing required, human subject only. Proceed? We didn't understand what it meant until it was too late. The chair emerged from the floor, black steel, wires, needles, hooks. I raised my rifle. "What is this, Harlan?" He looked at me, tears in his eyes. "The fail-safe." What kind of fail-safe requires someone to fry their brain? One that makes the monsters listen. Turns out the alphas weren't just experiments in strength. They were bonded through neural fields, connected psychically. They responded to a single source, a controller. But the controller had to be human, had to feel. That's what the aliens could never replicate. Human emotion, rage, hate, loss. It was our flaw. It was their weapon. "I was meant to be the pilot," Harlan said. "But I'm compromised. I've seen too much. I'm tainted." "And you think I'm not?" I growled. He didn't answer. The door behind us groaned. Something was coming. No time to argue. I dropped my gear, stepped into the chair, and let the needles slide into my spine. Pain exploded, white-hot, like swallowing lightning. Then I heard them, the alphas. Not in words, in feelings, fire, hunger, fear, curiosity. They felt me, and they obeyed. For the first time in years, I felt power not from a gun or a rank, but from within. I opened my eyes. The corridor behind us was filled with claws, fangs, black carapace. The alien from before, the gold-eyed killer, stood at the front of the pack. I didn't move. The alphas did. 3 shadows streaked past me, faster than thought. The first slammed into the wall, taking 2 enemy forms with it. The second landed on the gold-eyed one, tearing into its chest before it could react. The third, he stopped in front of me and bowed. I stood. The pain was gone. The fear was gone. I wasn't a soldier anymore. I was their voice, and the galaxy had just made a mistake. It tried to break Earth. Instead, it gave us permission to fight like the monsters we'd always been. The moment I connected to them, those alphas, it felt like falling into a bottomless pit and realizing you could fly. They didn't think in words, they felt. Every emotion they had was like a raw nerve, sharp, furious, ancient. They weren't just born from pain, they were pain. Sculpted in labs, fed lies, made to hate what created them, and then abandoned like defective war dogs. But the second I linked to them, it changed. Not for me, for them. They stopped being beasts, they became mine, and God help anyone who got in our way. The gold-eyed alien didn't stand a chance. One of the alphas, Gale, I felt his name more than knew it, drove his claw through its chest and ripped out something that pulsed. Not a heart, something worse, a command node. That thing had been coordinating the entire strike team telepathically, which meant they weren't just scouts, they were controllers. "And if," he asked. I turned to him slowly, still breathing like fire was in my lungs. "I feel like I've got hell inside my skull." "Good, keep it there. We didn't have time to bury the dead." Keg rigged the remaining charges as fallback traps while I tried to get the alphas to form up. They didn't speak, didn't salute, they just moved when I needed them to. Like wolves that had found an alpha after years of wandering the dark alone. Ward gave them nicknames because that's what snipers do. Helps them stay sane. The biggest one he called Crowbar. The thing had limbs like bent steel and moved like gravity didn't apply. Another he named Vein because its whole body pulsed with some black fluid that shimmered under light. And the one who bowed to me, the one who watched my every move, Ward called that one Father. Didn't make sense at first, but the way it shielded me, fought beside me, it was more than loyalty. It was purpose. We left Site X3 by nightfall, just as the sky split again. But this time, it wasn't one ship, it was hundreds. They didn't cloak. They didn't hover. They arrived. The extermination fleet, 8 species deep, ships the size of cities, weapons designed to melt continents. They weren't here for diplomacy or mercy. They were here to finish the job. And we were supposed to run. But Earth didn't run anymore. We sent one alpha ahead, Gale. He launched into the night sky like a missile, and 2 minutes later, one of the smaller enemy vessels erupted into flame. Not exploded. Tore itself apart from the inside. They weren't ready for this kind of war. They weren't ready for us. We moved east, toward the Colorado Wall, where the last free human outpost, Citadel Red, was holding off whatever ground troops managed to land early. On the way, we picked up signals, scattered, garbled, human units begging for air support, squads reporting in, only to scream and vanish mid-transmission. They were being overrun, so we changed course. We hit Denver first.